The sky was burning. From orbit, colossal warships loomed like gods of destruction, their weapons turning entire cities into firestorms. The Galactic Empire, a force that had subjugated countless worlds, had finally arrived at Earth's doorstep. Humanity had known they weren't alone in the universe, but they had never imagined first contact would be an extermination order. Major Ethan Carter stood on the roof of the crumbling Pentagon, watching Washington, D.C. succumb to chaos. The once proud skyline was reduced to rubble, the streets overrun with civilians desperately fleeing from mechanical war machines that stomped through the city like reapers of death. The air smelled of burning metal, ozone, and something far worse, human desperation. "Sir, NORAD is gone," a panicked voice crackled through Carter's earpiece. "They hit it first. The White House is dust. There's no central command left. Pull yourself together, Sergeant." Carter's voice was firm, but his knuckles widened around his rifle. "We're not done. Not yet." The invasion had begun barely an hour ago, yet Earth's greatest cities had already fallen. The Empire had sent no diplomats, no demands, just annihilation. Their goal was clear: total planetary subjugation. Humanity's primitive defenses, built for wars between themselves, were useless against energy-based weaponry and orbital bombardments. A deep, resonating hum shook the ground as a massive Imperial walker approached. The towering, multi-legged machine resembled a mechanical arachnid, its plasma turrets swiveling to obliterate anything that moved. Soldiers fired their rifles, but bullets sparked harmlessly against its energy shielding. "We need air support," someone shouted. "Negative," Carter growled. "We don't have an air force left." The USS George Washington, Earth's last surviving aircraft carrier, had been vaporized in the opening salvo. Fighter jets had been shot out of the sky like insects. Even nuclear weapons, humanity's most terrifying deterrent, had been rendered useless. The Empire's technology nullified radiation, making the ultimate weapon of Earth nothing more than a firecracker against their shields. Carter grabbed a fallen radio from a dead comms officer. Blood smeared his fingers as he tuned into an emergency frequency. "This is Major Ethan Carter to any surviving forces. We need an immediate retreat from the capital. I repeat, all units, fall back to fallback point Echo 7. We can't hold the line here." There was silence. Then, static. "Major Carter, this is General Vasquez. We're falling back to the Rockies." "Denver's still standing." "Barely." Carter exhaled sharply. At least someone was left. "Acknowledged, General. We'll get whoever we can out of here." As he turned to leave, a sudden explosion sent him sprawling. Heat seared his back as he hit the ground, ears ringing. A plasma strike had obliterated the remains of the Pentagon. Carter forced himself up, groaning. His squad was gone. Dead. Burnt. He clenched his jaw, forcing his grief down. There was no time. A high-pitched whine filled the air. A drone, sleek and metallic, descended toward him, scanning the wreckage with an eerie blue light. Carter didn't hesitate, he raised his rifle and fired, shattering its sensor. The drone emitted a shriek before spiraling out of control and smashing into the debris. But the damage was done. The Imperial walker turned, its monstrous cannons locking onto him. Carter braced himself. There was nowhere to run. But then, an explosion. A missile streaked through the sky, striking the walker's knee joint. Fire and debris erupted as the machine staggered, metal screeching in protest. Another blast followed, then another. From the smoke, a formation of stolen alien aircraft soared overhead, their human pilots wearing scavenged Imperial helmets. "Need a lift, Major?" a familiar voice cracked over the radio. Carter's heart leapt. Commander Ava Sinclair. The Resistance leader. He watched as the walker collapsed, toppling like a dying titan. Maybe Earth wasn't out of the fight just yet. Carter barely had time to react before the stolen alien gunship hovered lower, its side hatch sliding open. Wind and smoke whipped around him as Ava Sinclair leaned out, extending a gloved hand. "Move, Major." "We don't have all day," she shouted over the roar of the engines. Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed her arm, and with surprising strength, she yanked him aboard. The moment his boots hit the metal floor, the ship's pilot pulled the craft into a sharp ascent, weaving between the burning ruins of Washington, D.C. Plasma bolts from pursuing enemy drones streaked past, illuminating the interior with flashes of deadly blue light. Carter secured himself against the wall and turned to Ava. She was battle-worn, her short, dark hair matted with sweat, and her face smudged with soot. But her sharp eyes still burned with defiance. "You're a sight for sore eyes," Carter said, catching his breath. Ava smirked. "Didn't think we'd leave the famous Ethan Carter behind, did you?" Carter gestured at the alien craft. "How the hell did you get your hands on this?" Ava banged on the hull. "Captured it last week. Turns out, their security isn't as perfect as they think." The pilot, a young woman with a cybernetic implant over one eye, cut in. "We've got 3 more stolen ships running interference, but we won't last long if we don't get out of the city. We need a jump point." Carter turned to Ava. "Where are we headed?" "Rocky Mountain Resistance Base. Vasquez is holding the line there, but barely." Carter nodded. "Then let's move." But before the pilot could respond, the ship suddenly lurched. A plasma blast clipped the rear stabilizer, sending the craft spiraling downward. "Hold on," the pilot shouted. The gunship careened toward the ground. Buildings rushed past in a blur of shattered glass and fire. Carter grabbed onto a nearby rail as the ship spun wildly. Then, impact. The crash was violent. Metal screeched as the hull skidded across cracked asphalt, throwing sparks and debris in every direction. The force of it sent Carter tumbling, his body slamming against the wall before everything went dark. An hour later, Carter awoke to the sound of distant gunfire. His head pounded, but he forced himself to sit up. Smoke curled from the wreckage of the gunship, and Ava was already on her feet, pulling a wounded resistance fighter from the debris. "We need to move," she said grimly, her rifle at the ready. "Scanners show Imperial troops closing in." Carter checked his sidearm. Only a few rounds left. He scanned the battlefield. The crash had left them in the ruins of what was once a highway overpass. In the distance, Imperial walkers prowled through the city, their searchlights sweeping for survivors. Then, something else caught his eye, a towering alien structure in the heart of D.C. He recognized it instantly from the briefing reports. "Ava," he said, grabbing her shoulder. "That's an Empire comms relay." "So?" she asked, keeping an eye on their surroundings. "So it means we have a chance." Carter's mind raced. The Empire's technology was superior, but it relied heavily on centralized communication. If they could hack into that relay, they might be able to intercept enemy signals, maybe even disrupt their coordination. Ava considered it. "You really think we can pull that off?" Carter smirked. "Give me a tech specialist in 20 minutes, and I'll have them speaking in gibberish." Ava exhaled, then nodded. "All right. But we'll need to fight our way in." As if on cue, an explosion ripped through the street nearby. Imperial troops, sleek, armored figures wielding plasma rifles, were closing in fast. Carter grinned. "Guess we don't have a choice." He cocked his weapon. Time to remind the Empire why humanity never surrenders. Carter sprinted through the wreckage, his pulse hammering in his ears as plasma bolts sizzled past. The Imperial troops had spotted them, and now the air was alive with lethal blue streaks of energy. He slid behind the rusted shell of an overturned bus, pressing his back against the metal as Ava dropped beside him. "Tell me you've got a plan," she panted, checking her rifle's charge. Carter peeked out. The comms relay stood tall in the distance, its spire pulsating with eerie blue light. Between them and their objective, a squad of Imperial enforcers advanced methodically, their movements precise, calculating, like predators closing in for the kill. "We need to punch through," Carter muttered. If we take that relay, we can disrupt their entire ground force. Ava exhaled sharply. That's a whole lot of if, Major. Before Carter could respond, a grenade arced through the air, landing just a few feet away. Move! Ava tackled Carter as the explosion ripped through their cover. They hit the pavement hard, debris pelting their armor. The Imperial troops advanced, their rifles humming with lethal intent. Then, from the ruins, the shadows moved. A series of sharp cracks echoed through the streets. Sniper rounds tore through the enemy's sleek armor, dropping 3 soldiers in an instant. From a nearby rooftop, resistance fighters emerged, their weapons blazing as they flanked the advancing Imperial troops. The ambush was swift and brutal. In less than a minute, the once dominant Imperial squad was reduced to burning husks and lifeless bodies. A figure leaped down from the ruins, landing in a crouch before standing tall. A woman clad in makeshift combat gear, her hair pulled back in a tight braid, strode toward Carter and Ava. A resistance patch was sewn onto her shoulder. Well, she said, shouldering her sniper rifle. Didn't think I'd see the great Major Carter running for his life. Carter smirked. Good to see you too, Sergeant Reyes. Reyes gestured toward the fallen Imperials. You're lucky we were watching. What the hell are you two doing out here? Ava jerked a thumb toward the comms relay. We're taking that. Reyes raised an eyebrow. You're insane. Yeah, Carter admitted. But we don't have another choice. Reyes exhaled and glanced at her squad. All right. Then let's do something crazy. Storming the relay. They moved fast, weaving through the skeletal remains of the city. The closer they got to the relay, the thicker the enemy presence became. Drone patrols swept the streets, their scanners emitting a low, ominous hum. Imperial walkers prowled in the distance, their massive legs crushing vehicles underfoot. We don't have the firepower for a full assault, Ava murmured. We need a distraction. Carter turned to Reyes. You up for causing some chaos? Reyes grinned. I thought you'd never ask. She signaled her squad, and moments later, explosions erupted across the ruins. Fires ignited, smoke billowed, and alarms blared as the Imperials scrambled to respond. Go! Reyes shouted. We'll draw them away, get inside that relay. Carter and Ava sprinted toward the base of the structure, pressing themselves against the wall as enemy forces diverted toward the explosions. This is either really stupid or really brilliant, Ava muttered. Carter tapped at the stolen Imperial datapad strapped to his forearm. Let's hope for brilliant. He overrode the access panel, and the security door hissed open. They slipped inside. Inside the beast. The interior was sleek, sterile, and humming with alien energy. The corridors pulsed with a dim blue glow, and strange holographic symbols hovered in the air. Carter located a control terminal and got to work. Give me a minute. Ava raised her rifle, eyes scanning the corridor. We don't have a minute. Carter's fingers flew across the interface. He didn't understand the alien script, but he didn't need to, he'd studied their tech enough to know how to disrupt it. There, he breathed. I'm piggybacking their signal. We'll be able to hear their commands, troop movements. Ava grabbed his shoulder. We've got company. Down the corridor, the air shimmered. A towering Imperial Centurion decloaked, its crimson armor gleaming in the dim light. A plasma sword ignited in its grasp. Carter cursed. The Empire wasn't just sending foot soldiers anymore. They were sending executioners. And they were trapped inside with it. The Imperial Centurion moved like a specter, its crimson armor gleaming under the pulsing blue lights of the relay's interior. Unlike the standard enforcers, these elite warriors weren't mindless drones, they were trained, ruthless, and nearly unstoppable. The plasma sword in its grip crackled with lethal energy. Carter instinctively raised his rifle and fired. The round sparked against the Centurion's armor, barely leaving a dent. Ava opened fire as well, but the towering warrior moved with terrifying speed, deflecting her shots with precise swipes of its energy blade. "We need a plan, now," Ava snapped, backing up toward the terminal. Carter's mind raced. They couldn't win in a direct fight. The Centurion was too fast, too well armored. But they weren't here to fight, they were here to disrupt. He glanced at the control terminal, then at the thick cables running across the floor. A desperate idea formed. "Buy me 30 seconds, he shouted. Ava gritted her teeth. "I hate when you say that." She hurled a stolen Imperial grenade at the Centurion's feet. It exploded in a concussive blast, sending the alien warrior skidding backward. It recovered quickly, but Ava was already moving, darting between pillars to draw its attention. Meanwhile, Carter ripped open a panel on the control terminal, exposing a bundle of glowing conduits. He didn't have time to decipher them properly, so he did the next best thing. He grabbed his combat knife. Then he slashed straight through the wires. The relay flickered. Energy surged through the floor, sending sparks and arcs of electricity bursting across the room. The Centurion froze mid-stride as its armor's shielding flickered, momentarily destabilized. Ava saw the opening. She raised her rifle and fired a burst straight at the exposed joints of its armor. The shots punched through, and the Centurion let out a distorted, metallic roar. It staggered, then lunged. "Ava, move!" Carter shouted. She dove aside just as the Centurion's plasma sword slashed through the air where she'd stood. But before it could recover, the disrupted relay let out a high-pitched whine. The energy surge Carter had triggered reached critical mass. The room exploded. The price of war. Carter's ears rang as he struggled to sit up. The relay was in flames, sending thick smoke curling toward the ceiling. Sparks rained down from shattered conduits, and the air was thick with static electricity. The Centurion lay motionless, its armor blackened, its sword extinguished. Ava groaned beside him, coughing as she pulled herself up. "Next time, warn me before you blow up an alien relay." Carter grinned, wincing. "Didn't have time." Then he tapped his comm. "Reyes, do you read me?" Static. Then, loud and clear, "Major. We're picking up chaos on the enemy's channels." "What the hell did you do?" Carter exhaled in relief. "Cut their lines. Their ground troops are scrambling now, this is our chance." Ava was already moving. "Then let's get out of here before they recover." They sprinted through the burning corridors, dodging collapsing beams and electrical discharges. Outside, the city was in chaos. The Imperial forces were disoriented, their coordination fractured without the relay feeding them direct commands. Reyes' voice crackled over the comm, "We're rallying at an old underground bunker. Meet us there." Carter nodded. "Copy that." Then the transmission cut out. Ava frowned. "That's not good." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. A massive explosion erupted in the distance, right where Reyes and her squad had been. Carter's stomach twisted. "No." He grabbed his comm again. "Reyes. Reyes, respond." Nothing. Then a new voice came through. Cold. Calculated. "You should have surrendered, Major Carter." Carter's breath caught in his throat. He knew that voice. General Marcus Hale. Once a decorated Earth officer, now a traitor. "Vasquez is dead. Your resistance is over. Surrender now, and I might spare what's left of your people." Carter's grip on the comm tightened. He felt Ava tense beside him. Hale had betrayed them. And now, the fight for Earth was more than just survival. It was revenge. Carter's knuckles turned white as he gripped the comm unit. The voice of General Marcus Hale, the traitor, echoed in his ears. "Vasquez is dead. Your resistance is over. Surrender now, and I might spare what's left of your people." Ava saw the fury in Carter's eyes. "Don't let him get to you. He wants you to break." Carter took a deep breath. His mind was racing, but his path was clear. "Surrender," he growled into the calm, "not a chance, sir." A low chuckle came through the static. Predictable. Then the calm cut out. Ava's jaw tightened. "We need to move. If Hale knows where we are." A deafening roar filled the sky before she could finish. Carter and Ava instinctively hit the ground as a wave of heat washed over them. A fleet of Imperial bombers soared overhead, their crimson hulls gleaming in the firelight. Then the city exploded. Entire blocks were vaporized in searing flashes. Shockwaves ripped through the ruins, sending cars, debris, and bodies flying. The Empire wasn't just hunting the Resistance anymore. They were exterminating them. Carter struggled to his feet, ears ringing. He grabbed Ava's arm, yanking her behind the remains of a toppled skyscraper. "They're wiping out every last survivor." Ava's eyes darted toward the underground bunker where Reyes had been. It was nothing but flames and rubble now. She swallowed hard. "Then we make them pay." They had no time to grieve. The Empire's forces would be closing in fast. Carter pulled up his stolen Imperial datapad, scanning for remaining friendly signals. There, he pointed at a blinking marker on the map. An old Resistance supply cache near the Potomac. If anyone survived, they'll be heading there. Ava nodded, determination hardening her features. "Then let's move." They sprinted through the ruins, dodging drone patrols and avoiding Imperial shock troops. Every street was a graveyard, smoldering wreckage, bodies of fallen fighters, civilians executed where they stood. The Empire wasn't taking prisoners. By the time they reached the supply cache, only a handful of fighters remained. Dirty, exhausted, and outgunned. A young soldier, barely out of his teens, looked up as Carter and Ava entered. His eyes widened. "Major Carter?" Carter knelt beside him. "What's your name, son?" Private Hanley, sir." The kid swallowed hard. "We thought you were dead." "Not yet," Carter said grimly. "And neither is this fight." Hanley looked around. "What fight?" "We're all that's left." "No," Ava said firmly. "We're what's left, but we're not done." Carter stood. "We hit them now, before they wipe out the last of us." Hanley hesitated. "But, how?" "They have bombers, warships, an entire army." Carter pulled up his datapad, highlighting a single key target. "They also have command ships directing all of it. Take out the commander, and their forces fall into disarray." Ava's eyes widened. "You're talking about Hale?" Carter's voice was ice. "Yes." The plan was simple. Suicide, maybe. But the alternative was extinction. A stolen Imperial gunship, barely functional, sat hidden beneath rubble nearby. It had just enough fuel and firepower for one good strike. Their target? The Excalibur, General Hale's personal command ship, currently overseeing the destruction of DC. Ava double-checked the ship's launch systems. "We get close, board the Excalibur, and take Hale out before he realizes what's happening." Hanley swallowed hard. "And if we don't make it back?" Carter met his gaze. "Then we make sure the Empire feels it." Hanley nodded slowly. "Then I'm in." One by one, the surviving fighters armed themselves. They had nothing left to lose. Carter looked around at them, these final remnants of humanity's resistance. "This is for Reyes. For Vasquez. For everyone they took from us." Ava set the gunship's coordinates. The engines roared to life. "Then let's end this." The stolen Imperial gunship rocketed through the burning sky, weaving between collapsing skyscrapers and the eerie glow of enemy warships. Carter gripped the controls, jaw clenched as alarms blared around him. "Hold her steady," Ava shouted, bracing herself against the bulkhead. Behind her, Hanley and the remaining fighters prepped their weapons, their faces set with grim determination. Through the viewport, the massive command ship Excalibur loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and death hovering above the ruins of DC plasma turrets lined its hull, scanning for threats. "This is suicide," Hanley muttered. Carter smirked. "Only if we fail." The Excalibur was protected by a multi-layered energy shield, nearly impenetrable from the outside. Nearly. Carter's stolen Imperial datapad had provided a weakness, temporary shield disruptions when docking bays opened for inbound ships. If they timed it perfectly, they could slip in undetected. Ava sat beside him, eyes on the screen. Docking sequence detected. A patrol ship's requesting clearance. Carter pushed the engines to their limit. "Then let's give them an escort." The moment the bay doors opened, Carter sent the gunship into a near-vertical dive. The Excalibur's shields flickered as the patrol ship entered. "Now!" Ava shouted. Carter yanked the controls. The gunship lurched, squeezing through the opening just before the shields flared back to life. They were in. The landing was rough. Sparks flew as the gunship scraped against the bay floor, coming to a violent stop. The hangar was in chaos. Imperial troops wheeled around, stunned at the sudden intrusion. Carter didn't give them time to react. "Go, go, go!" The resistance fighters poured out, unleashing hell. Plasma bolts and bullets ripped through the hangar, cutting down unprepared guards. Alarms blared as enemy reinforcements scrambled to respond. Ava gunned down a charging trooper. Which way to hail? Carter checked his datapad. Command deck. Sealed behind blast doors. Hanley reloaded. "Then we blow the damn doors open." They fought their way through the corridors, taking out squads of enforcers with ruthless precision. The Excalibur shook as external explosions rattled its frame. Resistance fighters on the ground had begun targeting its defenses. Their mission had to succeed. At last, they reached the command deck. Massive reinforced doors blocked their path. Carter placed an explosive charge. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The explosion sent a shockwave through the hallway. As the smoke cleared, Carter stormed through, rifle raised. And there he was. General Marcus Hale stood at the far end of the command deck, clad in black Imperial armor. His back was to them, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out over the burning ruins of Earth. Around him, elite Imperial Centurions stood ready, plasma blades ignited. "You never did know when to quit," Hale said without turning. Carter stepped forward. "And you never did learn loyalty." Hale finally turned, his expression cold. "Loyalty? To what? A doomed species? Earth was always going to fall. The Empire offered us survival." Ava spat on the floor. "You mean slavery?" Hale sighed. "Humanity was weak, Major. I chose the winning side." Carter leveled his rifle at him. "Then you chose wrong." Hale smirked. "Kill them." The Centurions attacked. The room erupted into chaos. Plasma swords clashed with stolen Imperial weapons as the resistance fighters fought desperately. Hanley took down one Centurion before being impaled by another. Ava rolled under a strike, blasting an enemy's head clean off. Carter only had one target, Hale. They clashed, Carter's combat knife against Hale's plasma saber. Sparks flew as Carter barely dodged a lethal strike. Hale was strong, faster than he remembered. Imperial augmentation. But Carter was angry. He feinted left, then drove his knife into Hale's side. The traitor gasped, eyes widening. Carter leaned in. "This is for Reyes." Then he twisted the blade. Hale collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. The remaining Centurions faltered without their leader. One by one, the resistance fighters took them down. Ava panted, wiping blood from her face. "It's over." Carter looked down at Hale's lifeless body. "Not yet." He turned to the command console. The Excalibur's weapons were still operational. He had an idea. A crazy idea. "Let's use this ship to wipe out the rest of the fleet." Ava's eyes widened. "You're insane." Carter grinned. "Yeah. But it just might work." Carter's fingers danced across the command console, bypassing Imperial security protocols with ruthless efficiency. The Excalibur's systems flickered as he took control, its massive arsenal now at his fingertips. Ava stood beside him, gripping her rifle. "Tell me you have a plan." Carter's grin was sharp. "We turn their own guns against them." The Excalibur was the heart of the Imperial assault. If they could use its weapons to cripple the fleet, Earth might still stand a chance. But they had minutes before the Empire realized what was happening. Hanley, bloodied but still breathing, staggered to the console. "Sir, there's a problem. The fleet's command AI is overriding our access. We need a direct data link to the mainframe." Carter's stomach sank. "Where's the mainframe?" Ava exhaled sharply. "Engineering deck. Deep in the ship." Carter nodded. "Then let's move." The corridors of the Excalibur were a war zone. Imperial enforcers poured in from every direction, firing relentlessly. The Resistance fighters fought tooth and nail, but every inch forward cost them dearly. Ava kicked open a maintenance hatch. "Shortcut. Engineering's below us." They slid down the access tubes, landing in the dimly lit engineering bay. The mainframe loomed ahead, an enormous pulsating core of alien technology. Hanley ran to the terminal, hands flying over the controls. "Almost there, just need a few seconds." Carter turned just as a new squad of Centurions stormed in. "No time for seconds." Ava shouted, opening fire. The battle was brutal. Hanley ducked as a plasma bolt scorched past his head, his fingers working frantically. Ava cut down one enemy, then another, but they kept coming. Carter fought like a man possessed, a whirlwind of bullets and steel. A Centurion lunged, Carter sidestepped and drove his combat knife into its throat. Hanley shouted, "Done! We have control." Carter didn't hesitate. "Fire everything." The Excalibur came alive with fury. Its massive cannon swiveled, targeting the Imperial fleet. Beams of devastating energy lanced out, slicing through warships that had once seemed invincible. The Empire had never expected one of their own command ships to betray them. Within moments, the once dominant fleet was in disarray. Their capital ships burned, their formations shattered. Earth's remaining defenses rallied, launching a desperate counterattack. Ava stared in awe. "We're winning." Carter wasn't convinced. Not yet. The Imperial flagship, Tyrant's Wrath, still loomed above, its weapons charging for a final planet-killing blast. Carter grabbed the comm. "This is Major Carter of the United Earth Resistance. All remaining forces, focus fire on the Tyrant's Wrath. This is our last stand." The Tyrant's Wrath retaliated, unleashing a wave of destruction. The Excalibur shuddered as its hull was torn apart, alarms blaring. "We're not gonna last," Hanley shouted. Carter made a decision. A crazy one. He locked the Excalibur's course, straight toward the Tyrant's Wrath. Ava's eyes widened. "Tell me you're not." "We ram them," Carter said. "Take them down with us." Hanley swallowed hard. "You're insane." Carter smirked. "So I've been told." They braced as the Excalibur accelerated. Enemy fire raked across its hull, but it didn't stop. The gap closed. And then impact. A catastrophic explosion engulfed both ships, shaking the sky. The Tyrant's Wrath broke apart, its core detonating in a blinding burst of energy. The Imperial fleet faltered, leaderless, crippled. The Earth forces pressed the advantage, annihilating the remaining warships. And then, silence. Hours later, Carter's eyes fluttered open. Smoke filled his lungs, and pain lanced through his body. He was alive, somehow. Ava groaned beside him. "Remind me never to let you pilot again." They were in the wreckage of the Excalibur, barely surviving the blast. Around them, Earth's forces stood victorious. The Empire had fallen. Hanley stumbled over, grinning. We did it. Carter looked at the sky, clear, for the first time in years. Humanity had won. But the war had only just begun.